know, someone said to me today, abolish the Senate? Are you nuts? This is the best political theater we've had in years. He was only half serious, but he was sure right about today. We missed Chantal last night, but she's back tonight. She's in Montreal. Bruce is in Ottawa now, and with Andrew tied up tonight, Jennifer DITCHBURN is, like last night, with us again. And Jennifer, you were in the Senate gallery today. Give us that sense. What was it like in there?
Wow. Yeah. I put on Twitter that I wished that people could actually see what we were seeing. It's so frustrating that the Senate isn't televised. But it really was riveting. We saw some NDP MPs sitting in the gallery. You never see MPs in the Senate galleries. Even a couple of Conservatives and an independent MP that came in to watch what was going on. And, you know, Mr. Duffy was very passionate. He pointed. You know, you couldn't see this, but he was pointing across the floor at his former colleagues, all of whom were there except for one Conservative. I mean, that was pretty stunning. You don't see the Senate in full attendance almost ever. So there was sort of a dead silence as he was telling this tale of what had happened. And I can only say again, it was really riveting. I heard one senior staffer that goes way back saying that that there hadn't been anything this dramatic happen in the Senate since the whole GST battle, how many years ago now?
Yeah,
yeah, it was quite something to watch.
All right. Well, you know, there were a dozen or 15 clips that you could run of Mike Duffy. This is the one that prompted the Prime Minister's office to respond tonight. It's when he basically talked about the Prime Minister's involvement. Here's what he said.
I was ordered by the Prime Minister, pay the money back. End of discussion. Nigel Wright was present throughout, just the three of us.
All right, so the PMO is saying, well, there's nothing new in that. Chantal, what's your sense of this after watching for 48 hours from a distance and now you're into analyzing? What's your view?
Well, the first obvious one is that if you're going to have for a strategy that you make sure that the people you're going after have nothing left to lose, then you collect the storm that you see today, these three senators. Obviously, as we would too, want to keep their jobs, and they have been told that they're not going to, and why would they at this point not go after the government? About this being as dramatic as at the time of the GST, actually, I'd say I covered the GST and no one was going from his own party, going so personally after the Prime Minister. So I would say politically, if the stakes may be smaller, it is more dramatic. And finally, when the Prime Minister calls you in his office and has a meeting at the top, what that says is that this becomes a priority for the PMO. Basically, they have to get this done. So it's very hard now for Stephen Harper to say, I didn't know what was happening. This was just a small story taking place in the back office while I was dealing with matters of the state, because clearly he had put the stamp on this story and wanted something done.
Bruce, how damaging was Duffy to Harper today?
Well, extremely damaging. It was a stunning day, but in another sense, it was quite predictable. Almost anyone with a working email address who was in and around politics over the summer had to know that Mike Duffy had a story that he was ready to tell if push came to shove, if he felt as though he had absolutely no options left. And so last week, the decision by the Conservatives to force the expulsion of Mike Duffy was really lighting the fuse on the bomb that went off today. If somebody else is making these strategic decisions other than the Prime Minister should fire that person. If these are decisions that the Prime Minister is making, they're decisions that he's obviously taking, believing that people are going to move out of his way, that he's never going to be forced to answer these tough questions. And I think that calculus, if that is the one that he's making, is going to turn out to be wrong.
It does seem rather remarkable for a story that's gone on so long. I mean, as we know, most stories in Ottawa only last 48 hours, 72 hours at the most, and they're gone. This one's been going for 6 months. The Prime Minister has never really answered any of the questions, the big questions, throughout this whole thing. And that didn't change again today. What are we hearing about that strategy? Jennifer, they've clearly made a decision that they're just going to ride this one out. They think they can, anyway.
Right, and unfortunately, I don't think you can get out of this one with a photo opportunity, which is what we get as reporters, repeated photo opportunities And sometimes we're not even invited to those photo opportunities. So I think we're sort of at a critical point here. I was thinking about this today that reminds me something of the Clinton scandal, where he said, "I never had sex with that woman," sort of hanging on a technicality of what he saw as the situation being. And I think we've gotten to a point where hanging on to technicality. The $90,000 check that Nigel Wright may have written completely of his own accord, I think that's a completely separate issue now. There's a new, bigger issue about, was there an attempt to coerce a senator in the upper chamber to do something that he didn't want to do, to take the fall for something he didn't feel he had done, and put pressure on him, threaten him with losing his seat. Now, I'm not saying that this is what happened, this is what's been alleged, but if it appears that the Prime Minister's office is focusing on this $90,000 check so it can get away from answering myriad other questions, including how many lawyers in the Prime Minister's office were involved in this? How many lawyers from the Conservative Party of Canada? How many senators were involved? How many PMO staffers? I mean, Mr. Duffy and the RCMP files have brought up different names, and previously we were led to believe, in the spirit of what the Prime Minister's office has wanted us to believe, that this was all Nigel Wright acting on his own.
All right. Are we at a tipping point, do you think, Chantal?
If we're not at the tipping point, we are at what Prime Minister Jean Chrétien would have called a painting point. He used to say, if you painted yourself in a corner, what do? You walk all over the paint. The Prime Minister has painted himself in a corner. He started off by saying, "I knew nothing." How do you come out of there without putting paint on your shoes, and how long do you wait before you do it? There are no more bodies to throw overboard in the PMO. I don't think there is anyone left to fire over this. I believe that Stephen Harper approved if he didn't initiate this week's strategy, and I don't expect anyone to be given this walking papers.
Are we at the point where the story now is Stephen Harper? That it's, you know, it's no longer about expenses, it's no longer about who wrote the check, as Jennifer said. It's about Stephen Harper and how he's managed this story, this event. Bruce?
Well, I think that's where we're headed. I don't know if we're exactly there yet. I think we're going to have another day of interesting developments in terms of what will the choice of the Conservative senators be with respect to the motion to suspend these senators. I think the Liberals and Senator Jim Cowan made a very clever move today, introducing an amendment saying, let's give Senator Duffy a chance to be heard. Let's give him a process within the context of the Senate where he can tell his story. I think given the revelations that Senator Duffy made today, it's going to be very difficult for those Conservative senators to say, no, come to think of it, we don't want to hear any more about that. We'd just like to vote to get you out of the Senate. So a very interesting chess move by the Liberals. And I think we're probably going to end up hearing more one way or the other from Mr. Duffy. But ultimately, Peter, I think you're right. This really is a character question about the Prime Minister. It really goes to, you know, what Jennifer was alluding to, which is that his answers, if you go back through them all, the best defense may be that they are technically correct. But if they were intended to mislead people, and if that is going to be the judgment of people looking back on those in the light of new facts, should they come out and be consistent with Senator Duffy's story, that would be a very bad day for the Prime Minister.
He did, Duffy, that is, he did, you know, run a fairly wide swath in the attacks, as Jennifer mentioned, and pointing at some of the people across on the Conservative side of the Senate. Here's one other clip where he sort of, you know, fires his gun all around the room at a number of different people. Watch this.
I was called at home in Cavendish by Ray Novak, Senior Assistant to the Prime Minister. He had with him Senator LeBreton, Leader of the Government in the Senate. Senator LeBreton was emphatic. The deal was off. If I didn't resign from the Conservative caucus within 90 minutes, I'd be thrown out of the caucus immediately, without a meeting, without a vote. In addition, she said, if I didn't quit the caucus immediately, I'd be sent to the Senate Ethics Committee with orders from the leadership to throw me out of the Senate.
So what he does in there is he basically takes on the whole leadership of the Conservative Party, not just the Prime Minister, but everybody else at the same time. Quite a sight.
Yes, but
Scorched earth.
You can't take on the leadership of the Senate without taking on the Prime Minister. It doesn't happen. that's how it works. There are not separate bodies that sometimes meet each other in the night. So the leadership in the Senate acts upon orders. They come from the PMO. The PMO is run, last time I checked, by someone called the Prime Minister. And I believe that a lot of not only senators, but Tory MPs will recognize in the saga that they heard today experiences that some of them have had.
Well, Peter, I think the other thing, though, is that, the allegation, the central allegation is about the Prime Minister, ultimately. I think you're right, that over the course of yesterday through his lawyer and today with his own comments, Senator Duffy really drew a big circle around 6, 7, 8, 10 people and challenged their integrity. And it'll remain to be seen, other than Senator LeBreton, who said that Senator Duffy is talking fantasy, it'll remain to be seen if the others will say, no, there's nothing to what Senator Duffy is saying. We completely contradict those comments.
Well, just briefly, Jennifer, what were they doing when he was pointing at them and talking about them, LeBreton and the others? What was their reaction?
Shall I make a mime of it? Like,
yeah, it was just like that, right? It was just no reaction.
No reaction, or looking down at your iPad, or that sort of thing. But I have to agree with Bruce that the tables have, I won't say they've been turned, but the dynamic has definitely changed, because you have not only Senator Duffy, but Senator Brazeau and Senator Cowan looking across the island saying, are you a bunch of lackeys to the Prime Minister's office? Now, I know what Chantal was saying there about, them being one and the same, but the Senate is also supposed to be separate, the chamber of sober second thought. You're actually supposed to have your own mind and think things through and consider the debate that's before you. And so now we have this challenge that's lobbed at them. Are you actually going to think this through, listen to the testimony, and decide whether what's happening is fair, or are you just going to take your orders from the Prime Minister's office?
Let's listen to exactly the way that Senator Duffy put that to his former colleagues. This is what he said.
Honourable Senators and my friends, especially my colleagues on the other side, today you are facing what I faced in February. Be a team player and go along with the PMO and the Senate leadership, or stand up and do your constitutional duty. I wish I'd had the courage to say no back in February when this monstrous political scheme was first ordered. Today, you have an opportunity to stand strong and use your power to restrain the unaccountable power of the PMO. That's what this Senate's about. Sober second thought, not taking dictation from kids in short pants down the hall.
What do you make of that, Chantal?
I make of that this is a Prime Minister and a government that already has management issues in the caucus, where they need the Prime Minister to sign their papers to run in an election, and that they will have caucus management issues in the Senate, where senators do not need the Prime Minister to be re-elected since they are appointed.
Can that kind of pitch sway the room, the Senate Conservative caucus, Bruce?
I think it probably can. I think probably at a more senior level, the leadership will look at this and say, tactically, how will it look if we force the expulsion vote and we force our members to vote for it? So they may decide to back off. But at the very least, it's got to make for some sleepless nights for some of those senators who are considering the appeal that Senator Duffy made, which is quite powerful.
All right, Jennifer, you get the last word because you watch those senators every day. Do you sense they can be moved by what Duffy said, and you've got 30 seconds or less to say it?
No, I don't. I think that the vote will probably carry, and that because you don't see among the new appointees. I'm sorry, but I don't see a whole lot of independent speaking or thought there. I mean, most of them wouldn't even talk to us when we asked for their opinion today. That's how bad it's become. So I think that probably the government will carry the day when push comes to shove.
Well, we've still got to listen to one more speech, Senator Wallin, and she doesn't like to be outshone. She never has. It'll be interesting to see how she does in that room tomorrow. Thank you all. Chantal, great to have you back with us. Bruce and Jennifer, as always, thanks for joining us with us.